Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the pod, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Before we start, this episode is sponsored by my 3D printing website. Visit dangly3d.com, where I've just added about 15 new dragons to the site. They are absolutely awesome and adorable, and they all need wonderful adoptive homes. Check them out for yourself at dangly3d.com. Alright, on to today's stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Simo289. Do nothing? Okay. A couple of years ago, I worked customer support for an investment and pensions department of a larger company. Basically, answered the phone and helped customers who don't understand something about their account or need to access features usually reserved for their accountant. I had only been with the company about 3 months, had finished my training, and recently been cleared to take calls unmonitored. But a supervisor was still listening back to 3 or 4 of my calls each day just to check. It was coming to the end of the tax year, so the lines were super busy, open to close, but a lot of the calls I was taking were for pensions or ISA withdrawals or deposits. So all I had to do was check a few details, then drop the customer in the call queue for the relevant department. Due to the high volume and relative simplicity of these calls, I was answering 20 to 30 a day. After a week or so, I got a message from my team leader telling me I was taking too many calls, so the number he was checking wasn't a high enough percentage to be indicative of my performance. Okay, fine. Starting the next day, I would take a call, pass the customer on, then sit and twiddle my thumbs for around an hour, all while the queue is getting longer and longer. We're talking 2 to 3 hours on hold. Then take another call and repeat. Fast forward another couple of weeks and I have a performance review with my team leader. He says that my verification of customer identities isn't up to scratch with company standards. I explained that 1, I am meeting the standards that were laid out in our training, and that all further advice and guidance had been completely contradictory or so vague as to be meaningless. He tells me that when I come in tomorrow, I need to log in, mark myself as in training so I won't receive any calls, and wait to hear from him about next steps. So the next morning I log into my work laptop and wait to hear from him. For 5 days, I sat in my spare bedroom and office, playing video games, all while logged in, marked as in training, and waiting till I hear from my team leader. The next week, I get a message from a manager 2 or 3 steps above my team leader, asking why I haven't taken a single call in 5 days. I explained what my team leader told me, sent screenshots of emails, etc., and said that I was waiting to hear back. She said she would look into the situation and get back to me. Cue another week of video games and naps on company time. I ended up getting made redundant and taking the balance of my annual leave before anything got resolved, because the company outsourced 90% of the call handling to India. But those 2 weeks were great. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Original Charity 817. It says, I guess they realized they could not pay you for your time, and the customers were used to the wait. OP responded and said, I guess so. Funny though, because this company had made a whole thing of advertising that all their call centers were in the UK. Guess they had to drop that part from their ads. You know, honestly, if a large company isn't paying attention to you and they want to pay you to do absolutely nothing, then I see no reason why you wouldn't just sit back and collect that paycheck. Now, in this story, it was only about 2 weeks that OP got paid before they left, but if you check out another story we covered previously, Forgotten Employee, The American Dream, that employee was there for ages, getting paid to do nothing. And it's an epic story, so I highly recommend you check that one out if you haven't already. Linked in the description both on YouTube and the podcast. This story comes to us from Morvon Jellybean. Follow policy? Okay. A few years back, I worked in a corporate office where things ran pretty smoothly, until our new boss, Mr. Micromanage, arrived. Mr. Micromanage was obsessed with one thing: following company policies. He didn't care if policies were outdated, inefficient, or outright absurd. If the rule existed, you had to follow it perfectly, and he loved catching people not complying. One Monday morning, he called a meeting to lecture us on policy adherence. He ended his speech with, "If it's in the manual, you follow it, no exceptions." I'm not a fan of being micromanaged, but hey, rules are rules, right? I knew that our company's policy manual hadn't been updated in years, and some policies were questionable. So I decided to have a little fun. One of the most outdated rules was about how to handle printed documents. According to this gem, any printed company document, no matter how minor, needed to be reviewed and stamped by our document compliance officer before being distributed. Oh, and guess what? That position had been eliminated in a round of budget cuts 2 years ago. But hey, Mr. Micromanager said no exceptions. The next day, I printed out a standard quarterly report that everyone in the office needed. When people asked for it, I told them, "Sorry, I can't distribute it until it's been reviewed and stamped." I sent an email to Mr. Micromanager asking where I could find the non-existent document compliance officer. He came storming over to my desk confused. "Just send out the report." "I'd love to, but as per company policy, it needs to be reviewed and stamped first. Where should I send it?" Mr. Micromanager pauses and glares. "Just follow the policy." I nodded enthusiastically and let it be. Word spread quickly, and soon, everyone in the office was complying with every arcane policy in the manual. Karen from HR, she started enforcing the dress code policy that required all employees to wear business formal attire at all times. Suddenly, everyone was showing up in suits and ties, and people in accounting were running spreadsheets in cocktail dresses. Jake from marketing, he made sure to send a request to Mr. Micromanager every time he needed to make a 10-cent photocopy, as per the ancient policy that all expenditures, no matter how minor, must be approved by management. By the end of the week, the entire office was a disaster. People were wasting time and resources, projects were delayed, and everyone was cranky from wearing stiff, formal clothes. Mr. Micromanager tried to reprimand us, but we just kept saying, "Sorry sir, just following the policies like you said." It only took 1 week of chaos for Mr. Micromanager to call another meeting, where he begrudgingly told us to use common sense instead of following every single policy. He even promised to update the manual. And that, my friends, is how our office turned into a temporary circus of hilarious compliance until our boss finally learned that some rules are meant to be bent. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called TrippyNet. It says, "It's amazing how quickly a decision can be reversed once the stupidity of it becomes evident. Nicely played." Another commenter down below called SlackerButtFTW said, "Nope, every time I've been told to just use common sense instead of following standard operating procedures, no matter how outdated, it has bit me in the butt eventually. If they want me to stop following policy, they need to change the policy." I had a boss jumping my butt about violating a new policy that he had been on the committee that wrote it. I pulled out the policy and showed him I was following it to the letter, and got the "that's not what I meant when I wrote it." I've got to 100% agree with this last commenter. If you want me to go against current policy, then you need to change the current policy, or at least give me in writing what I'm supposed to be doing that contradicts the current policy, just so that there's some sort of backup when somebody else comes at me and says I'm not doing it the right way and they want to get rid of my job. This story comes to us from I Saw the Sign. Can't fit my bicycle in the luggage hold? A few months ago, I booked a return ticket to a nearby town over a busy holiday weekend. I wanted to do a little cycling over the weekend, so I phoned the bus company before the day of departure to check if I could take a bicycle with me. They confirmed that I could, so long as I arrived at the bus station half an hour early. On the trip down, they loaded my bicycle into the baggage hold, even opening up a special side hatch to make it easier to get it in. So I enjoyed a few bike rides while I was down there. Come the day of my return and it's belting rain. I get to the bus station half an hour early, but sopping wet. Considerate as I am, I purchased some paper towels to wipe down my bike so it won't dampen anyone else's luggage. Then the bus arrives. I go straight over to the baggage loading area and ask the guy if I can put my bike in. He replies, no. Do I need to wait? No, he's just not going to let my bike on, at all. So I spend a quarter of an hour arguing with the guy as the clock ticks towards departure time. I tell him the bus company has already confirmed I could bring my bike, but that does not move him. He keeps telling me there's no space in the hold, even though I can see there's space in the hold. Now, this is a Sunday and I have work the next day, and it's the end of a holiday weekend, so I might not be able to get a seat on another bus, even if they refund me my money, and nobody's talking about a refund. Finally, departure time has arrived. I yell out, well, head office said I could take it on the bus, so I'm taking it on the bus. And I hoist my bicycle in the air and step up into the passenger section of the bus and start making my way to my seat. Now, my seat was booked for the upper deck, so I also have to hoist my bike up the narrow spiral staircase to the upper deck, which I do. My bicycle is XL size, so all things considered, I'm astonished how limited and shallow the scratches were that I left on the plastic finishes of the spiral staircase as I went up. Amazingly, no one made any move to stop me, and the passengers on the upper deck all came onto my side, helping me to secure the bicycle and making no complaint about having to squeeze past it, even though it almost entirely blocked the corridor. Every now and then, the conductor would come up to check our tickets, see the bicycle blocking the way, and turn away defeated. Every time he did so, I made sure to say loudly to my fellow passengers, I don't know, to me, it would have made more sense to put it in the hold, but it's their bus, they make the rules, and the other passengers would agree with me. The bike and I got home safely. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called something that I have absolutely no chance of pronouncing. It says, times have changed. Around here now, all the buses have horns on the front for sticking bikes on. They encourage people to bike and ride. OP responded to this one and said, your country is on the right track. I'll have to wait for that glorious day to arrive over here. We have hundreds of kilometers of cycle lanes across the country now, but transporting your bicycle to these destinations can be tricky, as my story shows. Okay, what's interesting to me about this one is that OP was able to leave their bicycle in the aisle of the upper deck of the bus. Hello? Fire code, anyone? If there's an emergency on that bus and people need to get off it quickly, you can't have something like that blocking an aisle. I'm actually really surprised that the bus driver didn't make more of a stink about the bike blocking the aisle than they did about putting it into the storage under the bus. Something seems off here. This story comes to us from Happy Scattered Reader. You want the man of the house? Fine. This is one going back a few years, but it's one that made me chuckle when I remember it. As we live in a busy estate, we are in a prime position for door-to-door callers. Usually they were fine, polite, and if I was happy to listen to their pitch, then great, and if not, they were pretty good about hearing no and leaving me be. In our house, all the utility bills are in my name because I am the financial person in the household, and by mutual agreement, the one who knows how many beans make 5 when it comes to deals and offers. Therefore, I decide our provider each year and negotiate the best offers. I know the exact date we come out of contract and am generally organized in swapping suppliers. Sometimes I do this with the door-to-door salesperson and other times online or via phone. It just so happened one year that we had a door-to-door salesperson knock in for a utility that was pretty close to its contract end date. He immediately started his pitch with, "Good afternoon, is the man of the house here?" Now, straight away, that rubbed me up the wrong way. I answered no, and he proceeded to ask me when he would be home. I mentioned that he was at work, but he was welcome to call back after 5 p.m. when the man of the house would be home. The salesperson wrote this down in his book, nodded at me, and left. Sure enough, he called back after 5 p.m. and spoke to the very irritated man of the house, who asked the salesperson why he didn't speak to me about all this. The salesperson backpedaled so quickly and asked if I was there. Sadly, I was out and wouldn't be back until late, but he was welcome to call over again tomorrow and see if I would speak to him. As it so happens, I did speak to him the next morning. With a beaming smile and a smug of tea in my hand, I thanked him for reminding me to check my offers and had switched online to his company a couple of hours before he arrived. Then I waved him a cheery goodbye. I believe that would have cost him 2 sales, as I switched gas and electricity. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called MK Mead. It says, "My wife points this out to me a lot. We live in a rural part of the southern US. She has a decent sized hobby farm and sometimes needs to purchase hay or feed from other farms. The number of farmers that walk past her to ask me what I need is astounding. Even crazier since she's the one that talked to them on the phone or text. I just tell them to talk to her. She's the farmer. I just carry the heavy stuff." Another commenter down below called Pixel Tash said, many years ago, I would get cold callers on the landline. They would ask for the man of the house. So I would hand the phone to my toddler son to babble at them. If you need a Willy to talk to them, there you go. He has the equipment. Alright, in this day and age, and especially with people working for a huge company, are there not policies in place that get rid of statements like, "Can I speak to the man of the house?" I mean, come on. That is so outdated, it's not even funny. Although it does make me remember something my dad used to say when I was much younger. It was along the lines of, "Would you like to talk to the man in charge or the woman who knows what's going on?" If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.